Welcome back to our video series on Homeline's Minnesota Renters Agenda. This is the third video in a series, and today we will be explaining our eviction expungement bill.
As we mentioned in the previous video, evictions are a really big deal for individuals and families, as they can lead to families losing their homes, doubling or tripling up in apartments, living in unsafe conditions, or even homelessness. From 2015 to 2017, there were roughly 13,000 non-commercial evictions filed per year in Minnesota, with the most common reason for those evictions being non-payment of rent. Evictions are actually the second most common reasons for Homeline to get calls on our tenant hotline.
To make matters worse, once an eviction is filed, tenant screening agencies can report the eviction for 7 years following the eviction, and it stays on the public court record indefinitely. It doesn't matter if a person's financial situation has improved since they were evicted. The simple presence of the eviction on the record often blocks them from getting a lease for a new home. This can force people to continue living in unsafe conditions or out on the streets.
The current grounds for eviction expungement through Minnesota law are super limited. But expungement is a pretty weird and confusing word. So what does expungement really mean? Let's find out.
Expungement explained. Expungement. It means that your record of eviction is no longer publicly accessible. Landlords can no longer screen you based on the existence of that record.
What Homeline is proposing with eviction expungement reform wouldn't allow evictions to show up on any record until the courts have made a decision on the case. This may sound obvious, but the way Minnesota policy is currently structured, once a landlord files an eviction action, it goes straight onto the tenant's record. Even before the court date, definitely before the court makes a decision, and before the tenant even receives the court notice in the mail. And it stays even if the tenant wins the case or a settlement is agreed upon.
With Homeline's proposal, the courts would be required to order an expungement if the tenant won the case, if the case was dismissed, if the parties agreed on a settlement that included expungement, or if the eviction was filed 3 or more years ago. The courts would also be given more discretion in making the decision to order an expungement based on whether or not the eviction record is a reasonable predictor of a tenant's future behavior.
All of these reformations will provide more fairness in tenant-landlord relationships. The outcome of this bill would be to cut down the number of Minnesotans struggling to obtain affordable housing with an eviction on their record. In our next video, we'll be talking about Homeline's policy proposals regarding heat and repairs, so stay tuned.
Do you support the implementation of pre-eviction notices and the reformation of eviction court processes? Do you support eviction expungement reform? Do you think Minnesotans who rent should have the right to a warm home? Do you think renters deserve fair leases, like ones that include the right to privacy? If so, head over to Facebook or Twitter to let us and your legislators know.
To find out more about Homeline's Renters Agenda and sign on to endorse our policies, click the link in the description and be sure to share this video and our Renters Agenda. The more people we get to sign on, the more likely these policies will become state law.